Montana as a whole has been a little more relaxed as a generally more rural state. So I don't think we haven't seen like the effects the same way a lot of the big cities and stuff have. So it doesn't feel that different. Typically, I live out of my camper. I've lived out of a vehicle on the road full time for going on 4 years now. I freelance as a photojournalist, and so I'm all over the place. I don't really have a consistent base anywhere. But in the winters, I'm typically up in Canada doing ski photography and that kind of work. And so I was up in rural northern BC, and we've kind of been getting these, rumors kind of trickling in about like, oh, maybe people are taking this a bit more seriously. This was early March or so. Like, yeah, maybe this will be something, but who knows? Maybe it's just, like people overreacting. No one really knew at that point. And then I kind of got some word that maybe the border would close. And I was like, okay, I am, 17, 18 hours away from the border. I got to figure this out pretty quick. So went down, stopped about midway down, chatted with another friend there. They were saying, okay, maybe it's not going to close fully, at least not for a few days or something, but like kind of came to the conclusion it'd be better to get down at least across the border. And then I had to reanalyze what came next, because I live in a car, and if there are places that are putting in place these mandatory quarantines, that's not the best or most like kind of conducive thing for someone who lives on the road. So I got across the border, and luckily I had a friend who lives down here in Montana where I currently am. And so she said, yeah, like you can come quarantine here. So I've been here about 5 weeks or so now.
What are you particularly worried about for yourself or even just society at large?
I think that like personally, one of the things that'll be interesting is how social distancing plays out in regards to rural communities, which are at risk of large numbers of city dwellers coming to recreate in those places as a kind of escape. But they don't have the capacity of their health systems and other issues like that where they can't actually deal with that many people coming. At the same time, they're really reliant on tourism. Usually this time of year, I'm down in the Eastern Sierra of California, kind of that 395 corridor, or like Lone Pine, Bishop, Mammoth, that area.
Hmm.
And that's usually where I am for late spring going into early summer. And sometimes I help and work at a climbing shop there, because that's when they start getting their peak season is, like May, they work mostly May through, let's say, October, and that's their peak. And then they don't really make money during the rest of the year. So I'm kind of concerned for those rural communities that are reliant on tourism. But yeah, I think the way the rural communities enact, like between, I guess, on a statewide level, how they're and countywide level, how they're able to either whether they encourage people to visit or whether they kind of say like so far, like Inyo County, where that area is in Eastern California, people, they said like stay away for now, like please don't
Yeah.
come up here. We'd love to see you, not right now. You run into these issues where they're kind of saying, okay, like, Corona could get us, or the economy could get us,
Mhm.
because they're not really going to be able to sustain themselves for the most part. I mean,
Do you think there's any lessons that we'll be able to take away from this time as a community, as a species?
I'm purely astounded by humans' inability to grasp macro scale statistics. The way that we often, we base things intuitively is a kind of our primary system for making decisions. And then this kind of a secondary check is to try to think things through logically, or from a like statistics standpoint. We're really bad at probability. We're really good at like making decisions that will justify as being likely, but it's like there are things that are plausible, not things that are probable, basically,
Okay.
because we follow coherent narratives. Essentially, we don't follow numbers very well. I just feel like people aren't able to grasp the numbers, in part because our testing is so terrible right now, that we don't actually have a real idea of what we're dealing with. I think because we don't we just haven't done enough tests, right? I saw some numbers out of LA that, they were saying that it was like a USC actually, and like LA public health study that said they were finding that the amount of like infected individuals was 30 to like 55 times higher than what they were thinking. And it's like, that's where we're at, because we don't have antibody testing that's like widespread now. So we can't tell if people who were asymptomatic or were maybe having a mild case had it or not. We don't really know. Like the amount of, flack that people like Fauci get just is beyond belief to me. It's like, don't shit on the one guy whose like job is to understand these things, right?
Right.
Um, and it's like, like I don't think he has a political agenda. He's just trying to do his job.